Grandpa Smedry nodded to the two hillbilly attendants, then walked out toward his car, apparently going to grab the briefcases stuffed with food. I didn't follow him. At that point, I still felt a little overwhelmed by what was happening to me. Part of me couldn't believe what I had seen, so I decided to try to figure out how they were hiding that huge room inside. I turned, wandering around to the back of the small service station. Then I carefully paced off the lengths of its walls. The building was a rectangle, 10 paces long on two sides, 18 paces long on the other two. Yet the room inside had been far larger.
A basement?
Yes, I realized that it took me quite some time to accept that the place was magical. You Free Kingdomers really have no idea what it's like to live in librarian-controlled areas. So, stop judging me and just keep listening. I kept at it, trying to figure out some logical explanation. I squatted down on the hot, tar-stained asphalt, trying to find a slope in the ground. I stood up, eyeing the back of the building, which was set with a small window. I grabbed a broken chair from a nearby dumpster, then climbed up to peek into the window. I couldn't see anything through the dark glass. I pressed my face against it, bumping my glasses against the window, and shaded the sunlight with my hand, but I still couldn't see inside. I leaned back, but then it seemed as if I could see something. Not through the window, but alongside it. The edges of the window seemed to fuzz a tiny bit, and I got the distinct, strange impression that I could see through the wall's siding. I pulled off my glasses. The illusion disappeared, and the wall looked perfectly normal. I put them back on, and nothing really changed. Yet as I stared at the wall, I felt the odd sense again, as if I could just barely see something. I cocked my head, teetering on the broken chair. Finally, I reached up a hand, laying it against the white siding. I didn't really do much. I didn't have to twist, pull, or yank. I merely rested my hand against the wall for a moment, and one of the siding planks popped free and toppled to the ground. Through the broken section, I could see the true wall of the building. Glass. The entire wall was made of a dark, lavender glass.
I saw through the siding. Was it my glasses that let me do that?
I jumped, almost slipping off the chair. And there he was, the man from my house, the caseworker or whatever he was, with the suit and the gun. I wobbled, feeling terror rise again. Of course he would chase us. Of course he would find us. What was I thinking? Why hadn't I just called the police?
Lad?
Grandpa Smedry appeared around the corner, holding an open briefcase smeared with ketchup.
Your sandburger is ready. Aren't you hungry?
The man with the gun spun around, weapon still raised.
Don't move! Stay right there!
Grandpa Smedry didn't stop walking. The caseworker started to pull the trigger.
Grandpa!
As a chunk of siding blew off the building right in front of Grandpa Smedry, the old man continued to walk along, smiling to himself, looking completely relaxed. The caseworker's next two bullets hit the wall right in front of Grandpa Smedry. Now, a true hero would have tackled the man who was shooting his grandfather, or done something else equally heroic. I am not a true hero. I stood frozen with shock.
Here now. What's going on?
Looking desperate, the caseworker pointed his gun back at me and pulled the trigger. The consequences, of course, were immediate. The caseworker widened his eyes in disbelief as he stared at the pieces of his weapon. Grandpa Smedry paused behind me.
I think you broke it.
The caseworker turned and scrambled away. Grandpa Smedry watched him go, a sly smile on his lips.
What did you do?
Me? No, you're the one who did that. At a distance, even. I've rarely seen a talent work with such power. Though it's a shame to ruin such a good antique weapon like that.
I look at the gun pieces.
It couldn't have been me. I've never done anything like that before.
Have you ever been threatened by a weapon before today?
Well, no.
Panic instinct. Your talent protects you, even at a distance when threatened. It's a good thing that he attacked with such a primitive weapon. Talents are much more powerful against them. Honestly, you'd think the librarians would know not to send someone with a gun against the Smedry of the true line. They obviously underestimate you.
What am I doing here? They're gonna kill me.
Nonsense, lad. You're a Smedri. We're made of tougher stuff than the librarians give us credit for. Ruling the Hushlands for so long has made them sloppy.
I stood quietly. Then I looked up.
We're really going to go into the library? The place where these guys come from? Isn't that kind of stupid?
Yes. You can stay back if you wish. I know how this must all seem to you. Overwhelming, terrifying, strange. But you must understand me when I say our task is vital. We've made a terrible mistake. I've made a terrible mistake by letting those sands get into the wrong hands. I'm going to make it right before thousands upon thousands of people suffer.
But isn't there anyone else who could do this?
Those sands will be forged into lenses before the day is out. Our only chance, the world's only chance, is to get them before that happens.
I nodded slowly.
Then I'm going. You can't leave me behind.
Wouldn't dream of it.
Grandpa Smedri glanced up at the wall where I had broken it.
You do that?
I nodded again.
Nagging! Nixes! Oh, you really do have quite the skill for breaking things. Must have been hard for you when you were younger.
I shrugged.
What kinds of things can you break?
All kinds of things. Doors, electronics, tables. Once I broke a chicken.
A chicken?
It was on a field trip. I got kind of frustrated, and I picked up a chicken. When I put it down, it immediately lost all of its feathers, and from then on refused to eat anything but cat food.
Breaking living things. Extraordinary. Untamed, yes, but extraordinary nonetheless.
I pointed at the building, hoping to change the subject.
It's a glass box.
Yes, expander's glass. If you make space inside of it, you can push out the walls inside without pushing out the walls on the outside.
That's impossible. It disobeys the laws of physics.
That's just librarian talk. You've got a lot to learn, lad. Come on, we need to get moving. We're late.
I allowed myself to be led away, past the 3 bullet holes in the siding.
They missed. It's a good thing that man had such bad aim.
Bad aim. He didn't have a chance of hitting me. I arrived late to every shot. Your talent can do some great things, my boy, but it's not the only powerful ability around. I've been arriving late to my own death since before you were born. In fact, once I was so late to an appointment that I got there before I left.
I paused, trying to work through that last statement, but Grandpa Smedri waved me on. We rounded the building. Quentin and Singh stood with one of the station attendants, talking quietly. Singh had a good dozen different guns strapped to his body. He wore 2 holsters on each leg, 1 holster around each upper arm, and 1 underneath each arm. These were complemented by a couple of Uzis tucked into his sash, and what looked like a shotgun tied to his back, as if it were a sword.
Oh, dear. He's not supposed to show them off like that, is he?
No.
Could we peace bond them, you think?
I don't know what that is, but I doubt it would help.
Still, after getting shot at, the sight of Singh with all those weapons did make me feel a little more comfortable. Until I realized that if we were going to be bringing an arsenal like that, what would our enemies have?
Well, I already told him he could bring them. We can hide them in a bag or something. They're really not that dangerous. It's not like he's got a sword or something. Anyway, we need to get moving. We're
Late. Yes, I know.
good. Then let's...
At this point, you should be very annoyed with people getting interrupted mid-sentence. I assure you that I feel the same way. In fact, I think a silver sports car races into the parking lot. Its windows were tinted the deepest black, even the windshield. And it had a sleek, ominous design, the make and model of which I couldn't quite place. It was like every spy car I'd ever seen melded into one. The door burst open, and a girl, about my age, jumped out. Her hair was silvery, matching the car's paint, and she wore fashionable black slacks and silver jacket, and carried a black handbag. She appeared to be very, very angry.
Smedri!
What?
Not you, lad. She means me.
What? What did you do?
Nothing much. I just kind of left her behind. That's Bastille, lad. She's our team's knight.
If I had any sense, I'd have run away right then. At this point, perhaps you Hushlanders are beginning to doubt the truth of this narrative. You have seen several odd and inexplicable things happen. Though, let me warn you that the story so far has actually been quite tame. Just wait until we get to the part with the talking dinosaurs. Some readers might even think that I'm making this story up. You might think that everything in this book is dreamy silliness. Nothing could be further from the truth. This book is serious. Terribly serious. Your skepticism results from a lifetime of training in the librarian's school system, where you were taught all kinds of lies. Indeed, you'd probably never even heard of the Smedries, despite the fact that they are the most famous family of oculators in the entire world. In most parts of the Free Kingdoms, being a Smedry is considered equivalent to being nobility. If you wish to perform a fun test, next time you are in history class, ask your teacher about the Smedries. If your teacher is a librarian spy, he or she will get red-faced and give you detention. If, on the other hand, your teacher is innocent, he or she will simply be confused, then likely give you detention. Remember, despite the fact that this book is being sold as a fantasy novel, you must take all of the things it says extremely seriously, as they are quite important, are in no way silly, and always make sense. Rutabaga.
That is a knight?
I pointed at the silver-haired girl.
Unfortunately.
But she's a girl.
Yes, and a very dangerous one, I might add. She was sent to protect me.
Sent? Who sent her then? And is she supposed to protect you from librarians, or from yourself?
Bastille stalked right up to Grandpa Smedry, placed her hands on her hips, and glared at him.
I'd stab you with something if I didn't know that you'd arrived too late to get hurt.
Bastille, my dear. How pleasant. Of course, I didn't mean to leave you behind. You see, I was running late and I needed to go.
Bastille held up a hand to silence Grandpa, then glared at me.
Who is he?
My grandson, Alcatraz.
Another Smedry? I have to try to protect 4 of you now?
Bastille, dear, no need to get upset. He won't be much trouble, will you, Alcatraz?
No.
Bastille narrowed her eyes.
Somehow I doubt that. What are you planning, old man?
Nothing to worry about. Just a little infiltration.
Of?
The downtown library.
What? Honestly, can't I even leave you alone for half a day? Shattering glass. What would make you want to infiltrate that place?
They have the sands of Rashid.
So? We've got plenty of sand.
These sands are very important. It's an oculator sort of thing.
Bastille's expression darkened a bit at that comment. She threw her hands up in the air.
Whatever. I assume we're late.
Very.
Fine.
She stabbed a finger at me. I barely suppressed a tense jump.
You, get in my car. You can fill me in on the mission. We'll meet you there, old man.
Lovely. Must I remind you, Alcatraz, that you shouldn't swear? Now, we're late! Get moving!
Swear?
However, my confusion gave Grandpa Smedry a perfect chance to escape, and I caught sight of the man's eyes twinkling as he jumped into his car, Quentin and Singh joining him.
For an old man who arrives late to everything, he certainly is spry.
Come on, Smedry.
Bastille climbed back into her sleek car. I rounded the vehicle and pulled open the passenger side door. I tossed the handle to the side as it broke off, then climbed in. Bastille rapped her knuckles on the dashboard, and the car started. Then she reached for the gear shift, throwing it into reverse.
Doesn't the car drive itself?
Sometimes. It can do both. It's a hybrid. We're trying to get closer to things that look like real Hushlander vehicles.
With that, the car burst into motion. Now, I had been very frightened on several different occasions in my life. The most frightening of these involved an elevator and a mine. Perhaps the second most frightening involved a caseworker and a gun. Bastille's driving, however, quickly threatened to become number 3.
Aren't you supposed to be some sort of bodyguard?
I furiously worked to find a seatbelt. There didn't appear to be one.
Yeah. So?
So shouldn't you avoid killing me in a car wreck?
Bastille frowned, spinning the wheel and taking a corner.
I don't know what you're talking about.
I settle into my seat. telling myself that the car probably had some sort of mystical device to protect its occupants. I was wrong, of course. Both oculator powers and cinematic technology have to do with glass, and I seriously doubt that an airbag made of or filled with glass would be all that effective. Amusing, perhaps, but not effective.
Hey, how old are you?
13.
Should you be driving then?
I don't see why not.
You're too young.
Says who?
Says the law.
I could see Bastille narrow her eyes, and her hands grip the wheel even tighter.
Maybe librarian law.
This is probably not a topic to pursue further. So, what's your talent?
Bastille gritted her teeth, glaring out through the windshield.
Well,
You don't have to rub it in, Smedry.
you don't have a talent then.
Of course not. I'm a Kristen.
A what?
Bastille turned, an action that made me rather uncomfortable, as I thought she should have kept watching the road, and gave me the kind of look that implied that I had just said something very, very stupid. And indeed, I had said something very stupid. Fortunately, I made up for it by doing something rather clever, as you will see shortly. Bastille turned her eyes back on the road, just in time to avoid running over a man dressed like a large slice of pizza.
So you're really him then? The one old Smedry keeps talking about.
He's mentioned me to you?
Twice a year or so, we have to come back to this area and see where you've moved. Old Smedry always manages to lose me before he actually gets to your house. He claims I'll stand out or something. Tell me, did you really knock down one of your foster parents' houses?
That rumor is exaggerated. It was only a storage shed.
Bastille nodded, eyes narrowing, as if for some reason she had a grudge against sheds to go along with her apparent psychotic dislike of librarians.
So, how does a 13-year-old girl become a knight anyway?
What's that supposed to mean?
And here's where I proved my cleverness. I remained silent. Bastille seemed to relax a bit.
Look, I'm sorry. I'm not very good with people. They annoy me. That's probably why I ended up in a job that lets me beat them up.
Is that supposed to be comforting?
Plus, you're a Smedry, and Smedrys are trouble. They're reckless, and they don't like to think about the consequences of their actions. That means trouble for me. See, my job is to keep you alive. It's like, sometimes you Smedrys try to get yourselves killed, just so I'll get in trouble.
I'll try my best to avoid something like that.
Her comment sparks a thought in my head. Now that I had begun to accept the things happening around me, I was actually beginning to think of Grandpa Smedry as, well, my grandfather. And that meant
My parents. They might actually be involved in this. They might actually have sent me that bag of sands.
they would have been Smedry's too, of course. So, were they some of the ones that got themselves killed, as Bastille so nicely put it? Or like all these other relatives I was suddenly learning I had, were my parents still around somewhere? That was a depressing thought. A lot of us foster children don't like to consider ourselves orphans. It's an outdated term, in my opinion. It brings to mind images of scrawny, dirty-faced thieves, living on the street and getting meals from good-hearted nuns. I wasn't an orphan. I had lots of parents. I just never stayed with any of them all that long. I'd rarely bothered to consider my real parents, since Miss Fletcher had never been willing to answer questions about them. Somehow, I found the prospect of their survival to be even more depressing than the thought of them being dead.
Why did you burn down your foster parents' kitchen, lad?
I quickly turned away from that line of thinking, focusing again on Bastille. She was shaking her head.
Your grandfather, he's the worst. Normal people avoid inner libraria. The librarians have enough minions in our own kingdoms to be plenty threatening, but Leavenworth Smedry? Fighting them isn't nearly dangerous enough for him. He has to live as a spy inside of the Shattering Hushlands themselves. And of course, he drags me with him. Now he wants to infiltrate a library? And not just any library, but the regional headquarters, the biggest library in 3 states.
She glances at me.
You think I have good reason to be annoyed?
Definitely.
I once again proved my cleverness.
That's what I thought.
Then Bastille slammed on the brakes. I smashed against the dash, nearly losing my glasses.
What?
What? We're here.
Oh.
Out of the car, I dropped the inside handle to the street as it came off in my hand. This kind of thing becomes second nature to you after you break off your first 100 or so door handles. Bastille had parked on the side of the street, directly across from the downtown library, a wide single-story building set on a street corner. The area around us was familiar to me. The downtown wasn't extremely huge, not like that of a city like Chicago or LA, but it did have a smattering of large office buildings and hotels. These towered behind us. We were only a few blocks away from the city center. Bastille touched the hood of her car.
Go find a place to park.
Watching it back away without a driver, I raised an eyebrow.
Handy, that.
Like Grandpa Smedry's car, this one had no visible gas cap cover.
I wonder what powers it.
The answer to that, of course, was sand. Cinematic sand, to be precise. Sometimes called bright sand. But I really don't have room to go into that now, even if its discovery was what eventually led to the break between cinematic technology and ordinary Hushlander technology. And that was kind of the foundation for the librarians breaking off from the Free Kingdoms and creating the Hushlands. Kind of.
Old Smedry won't be here for a few more minutes.
Bastille stood with her handbag over her shoulder.
He'll be late. How does the library look?
Like a library?
Funny, Smedry. Very funny.
Now, I generally know when I'm being funny. At this moment, I did not believe that I was. I looked over at the building, trying to decide what Bastille had meant. And as I stared at it, something seemed to change about the library. It wasn't anything I could distinctly put my finger on. It simply grew darker somehow. More threatening. The windows appeared to curl slightly like horns, and the stonework shadows took on a menacing cast.
It looks dangerous.
Well, of course. It's a library.
Right. What else should I look for then?
I don't know. I'm no oculator.
I squinted. As I watched, the library seemed to stretch.
It's not just one story. It looks like 3.
We knew that already. Try for less permanent auras.
What does that mean?
I studied the building more. It now looked far larger, far more grand to my eyes.
The top 2 floors look thinner than the bottom floor. Like they're squeezing in slightly.
That's probably a population aura. It means the library isn't very full today. Most of the librarians must be out on missions. That's good for us. Any dark windows?
1. It's jet black. Like it's tinted.
Shattering glass.
What?
Dark oculator. What floor?
3rd, north corner.
We'll want to stay away from there then.
I'm guessing a dark oculator is something dangerous, right?
They're like super librarians.
Not all librarians are oculators?
Of course not. Very few people are oculators. Smedry's on the main line and a few others. Regardless, dark oculators are very, very dangerous.
Well then, if I had something valuable like the sands of Rashid, then I'd keep them with me, so that's probably the first place we should go.
Bastille looked at me, eyes narrowing.
Just like a Smedry. If you die, I'm never going to get promoted.
How comforting.
I nod at the library.
I'm seeing something else about the building. I think some of the windows are glowing a bit.
Which ones?
All of them, actually. Even the black one. It's a little strange.
There's a lot of oculatory power in there. Strong lenses, powerful sands, that sort of thing. They're making the glass charge with power by association.
I reached up, sliding the glasses down on my nose. I still couldn't quite tell if I was seeing actual images or if the light was just playing tricks on me. The changes were so subtle, even the stretching, that they didn't even seem like changes at all. More like impressions. I pushed the glasses back up, then glanced at Bastille.
You certainly seem to know a lot about this, especially for someone who says she's no oculator.
Bastille folded her arms, looking away.
So, How do you know all this? About the dark oculator and the library seeming empty?
Anyone would know those auras. They're simple, really. Honestly, Smedry, even someone raised by librarians should know that.
I wasn't raised by librarians. I was raised by ordinary people. Good people.
Oh? Then why did you work so hard to destroy their houses?
Look, aren't knights supposed to be a little less annoying?
Bastille stood upright. Then she swung her purse straight at my head. I started, but remained where I was.
The handbag strap will break. It won't be able to hit me.
And so, of course, it smashed right into my face. It was surprisingly heavy, as if Bastille had packed a brick or two inside, just in case she had to whack the odd Smedry in the head. I stepped backward and stumbled, falling to the ground. My head banged against the street lamp. As I rub my head, I look up at where the lamppost's light bulb used to be.
Oh, sure. That breaks.
Bastille looked down at me with satisfaction, but I caught a glimmer of surprise in her eyes, as if she too hadn't expected to be able to hit me.
Stop making so much noise. People will notice.
Behind her, Grandpa Smedry's little black car finally puttered up the street, coming to a stop beside us. I could see Sing smooshed into the back seat, obscuring the entire back window. Grandpa Smedry climbed perkily out of the car as I stood rubbing my jaw.
What happened?
He glanced at the broken light, then at me, then at Bastille.
Nothing.
Grandpa Smedry smiled, eyes twinkling, as if he knew exactly what had happened.
Well, we should be off then.
I nodded, straightening my glasses.
Let's go break into the library.
And once again, I considered just how strange my life had become during the last 2 hours. Rutabaga. Kindly pretend that you own a mousetrap factory. Now, I realize that some of this narrative still might feel a little far-fetched to you. For instance, you might wonder why the librarians hadn't captured Grandpa Smedry and his little team of spies long before they attempted this particular infiltration. My friends do, as you have undoubtedly noticed, stand out, with their self-driving cars, odd disguises, and near-lethal handbags. This brings us back to your mousetrap factory. How is it doing? Are profits up? That's very pleasant. A mousetrap factory, as you well know since you own one, creates mousetraps. These mousetraps are used to kill mice. However, your factory is in a very nice, clean part of town. That area itself has never had a problem with mice. Your mousetraps are sold to people who live near fields where mice are far more common. So, do you set mousetraps in your own factory? Of course not. You've never seen any mice there. And yet, because of this, if a small family of mice did somehow sneak into your factory, they might have a very nice time living there, as there are no traps to kill them. This, friends, is called irony. Your mousetrap factory could itself become infested with mice. In a similar way, the librarians are very good at patrolling the borders of their lands, keeping out enemy oculators like Grandpa Smedry. Yet they don't expect to find mice like Grandpa Smedry hiding in the centers of their cities. And that is why 2 men in tuxedos, one very large Mokian in sunglasses and a kimono, one young girl with a soldier's grace, and a very confused young oculator in a green jacket could walk right up to the downtown library without drawing too much librarian attention. Besides, you've seen the kind of people who walk around downtown, haven't you?
All right, Smedry, what's the plan?
Well, first I'll take an oculatory reading of the building.
Done. Low librarian population, high oculatory magic content, and a very nasty fellow on the 3rd floor.
Grandpa Smedry squinted at the library through his reddish glasses.
Why, yes. How did you know?
Bastille nodded to me.
Getting used to the lenses this quickly. You show quite a bit of promise, lad. Quite a bit indeed.
Bastille did the interpreting. I just described what I saw.
Was this before or after she smacked you with her purse?
Quentin watched the conversation with amusement, while Sing poked around in the gutter. Sing had fortunately put away his weapons, and was now carrying them in a large gym bag, which clashed horribly with his kimono.
Well, well, well. Sneaking into the downtown library at last. I think our base infiltration plan should work, wouldn't you say, Quentin?
Cantaloupe. Fluttering paper makes a duck.
What's that supposed to mean?
Don't mind him. He says things that don't make sense.
His talent. Right.
And what exactly is your base infiltration plan?
Quentin takes a few minutes scouting and watching the lobby just to make sure all's clear. Then Sing makes a distraction and we all sneak into the employee access corridors. There, we split up, one oculator per team, and search out powerful oculatory sources. Those sands should glow like nothing else.
And if we find the sands?
Take them and get out. Sneakily, of course.
Huh. Why, that actually sounds like a good plan.
Of course it is. We spent long enough working on it. I've worried for years that someday we might have to infiltrate this place.
Worried?
The fact that even Grandpa Smedry found the infiltration a bit unnerving made it seem even more dangerous than it had before.
Anyway, Quentin, be off. We're late already.
The short man nodded, adjusted the carnation on his lapel, then ducked through the building's broad glass doors.
Grandfather, these people want to kill me, right?
Don't feel bad.
He removed his lenses.
They undoubtedly want to kill all of us.
Right, so shouldn't we be hiding or something? Not just standing on the street corner in plain sight?
Well, answer me this. That man with the gun, had you seen him before?
No.
Did he recognize you?
No, actually. He asked who I was before he tried to shoot me.
Exactly!
Grandpa Smedry strolled over to glance in the library window.
You are a very special person, Alcatraz, and because of that, I suspect that those who watch over you didn't want their peers knowing where you were. You may be surprised to hear this, but there are a lot of factions inside the librarian ranks. The Dark Oculators, the Order of the Shattered Lens, the Scrivener's Bones. Though they all work together, there's quite a bit of rivalry among them. For the faction controlling your movements, the fewer people who knew about you, or recognized you, the better. That way, they could keep better control over the sands when they arrived. I won't lie, Alcatraz. This mission will be very dangerous. If the librarians catch us, they will likely kill us. Now that they have the sands, they have no reason to let you live, and every reason to destroy you. However, we have 3 things going for us. First, very few people will be able to recognize us. That should let us slip into the library without being stopped. Second, as you have noticed, most of the librarians are out of the library at the moment. My guess is that they're actually searching for you and me, perhaps trying to break into our gas station hideout.
And the third thing we have going for us?
Nobody would expect us to try something like this. It's completely insane.
Great.
Now, you might want to take off those oculators' lenses. They're the only thing that makes you distinctive right now.
I quickly did so.
Quentin will stay in the lobby and inner stacks for a good 5 minutes or so, watching for any signs of unusual patterns in the librarian movement or security. Meaning, we will have a little bit of time here. Try to wait without looking suspicious.
A few moments later, Sing set down his gym bag of weaponry.
Alcatraz, your grandfather tells me that you grew up raised by Hushlander parents.
Yes?
Wonderful. Tell me, what is the significance of this?
He proffered something small and yellow, which he had likely found in the gutter.
It's just a bottle cap.
Yes.
Sing peered at it through his sunglasses.
I'm aware of your primitive liquid beverage packaging methods. But look, see here. What's this on the underneath?
I accepted the bottle cap. On the underside, I could see printed the words, "You are not a winner."
See what it says?
Sing pointed with a chubby finger.
Is it common for Hushlanders to print insults on their foodstuffs? What is the purpose of this advertising campaign? Is it to make the consumer feel less secure, so they purchase more highly caffeinated drinks?
It's just a contest. Some of the bottles are winners, some aren't.
Why would a bottle want to win a prize? In fact, how do bottles even go about claiming prizes? Have they been enlivened? Don't your people understand that enlivening things is dark oculary?
It's not oculary, Sing. If you open the bottle and the cap says you're a winner, then you can claim a prize.
Oh.
He seemed a bit disappointed. Still, he carefully tucked the cap inside a pouch at his waist.
Why do you care about that anyway? Aren't you an ancient weapons expert?
Yes. Well, an ancient weapons expert, and an ancient clothing expert, and an ancient cultures expert.
I frowned.
He's an anthropologist, lad. One of the most famous ones at the Mokian Royal University. That's why he's part of the team.
Wait, he's a professor?
Of course! Who else would be able to work those blasted guns? The civilized world hasn't used such things for centuries. We figured that we should have someone who can use them. Swords might be more effective, but nobody carries them in the Hushlands. It's better to have at least one person on the team who understands and can use local weapons, just to be sure.
But don't worry. I may not be a soldier, but I've practiced with the weapons quite a bit. I've never shot at something moving before, but how difficult can it be?
And what about Quentin? Is he a professor too?
No. He's merely a graduate student.
He's quite capable, though. He's a language specialist who focuses on Hushlander dialects.
So, let me get this straight. Our strike team consists of a loony old man, an anthropologist, a grad student, and 2 kids.
Grandpa Smedry and Singh nodded happily. Bastille, leaning against the library wall a short distance away, gave me a flat stare.
You see what I have to work with?
I nodded, beginning to understand where she might have gotten such a grumpy attitude.
Oh, don't be like that.
Grandpa Smedry walked over, putting his arm around my shoulders and pulling me aside.
Here, lad, I have some things I want to give you.
Grandpa Smedry pulled open his tuxedo jacket and removed 2 pairs of spectacles.
You'll recognize these.
He held up a yellow-tinted pair.
I used them when I first picked you up from the house. They're fairly easy lenses to wield. If you can already do readings like you did in the library building, you should be able to use these.
I accepted the glasses, then tried them on. At first, nothing changed. But then, I thought I saw something. Footsteps in various colors, fading slowly on the ground around me.
Tracks.
I watched as Singh wandered over to another gutter, leaving a trail of blue footprints on the asphalt behind him.
Indeed, lad. The better you know a person, the longer the footprints will remain visible. Once we get inside, we'll split up. You and I are the only oculators in the group, so we'll be the only ones who will be able to sense where the sands are. But the inside of a library can be deceptively large. Sometimes the stacks form mazes and it's easy to get lost. If you lose your way, you can use these tracker's lenses to retrace your footprints. Also, you can probably track me down if necessary.
I glanced down. Grandpa Smedry's footprints glowed a blazing white, like little bursts of flame on the ground. I could easily see the trail of white back to Grandpa Smedry's black car, still parked across the street.
Thanks.
I still felt a little apprehensive as I removed and pocketed the tracker's lenses.
You'll do fine, lad.
Grandpa picked up a second pair of glasses.
Remember, this is your inheritance we're searching for. You lost it, and you'll have to get it back. I can't hold your hand forever.
I felt like noting that I had seen very little hand-holding in this adventure so far. I didn't really know what was going on, didn't quite trust my sanity anymore, and wasn't even convinced that I wanted my inheritance back. Grandpa Smedry, however, didn't give me an opportunity to complain. He held up the second pair of glasses. They had mostly clear lenses, with a little dot of red at the center of each one. He handed the lenses to me.
These are one of the most powerful pairs of oculatory lenses I possess. However, they're also one of the easiest to use, which is why I'm lending them to you.
I eyed the glasses.
What do they do?
You can use them for many purposes. Once you switch them on, you just have to concentrate a bit to do that. They'll begin gathering the light around you, then direct it out in concentrated beams.
You mean, like a laser?
Yes! These are very dangerous, Alcatraz. I don't carry many offensive lenses, but I've found these too useful to leave behind. However, let me warn you. If there really is a dark oculator in there, you'll be able to sense when you activate these. Only use the Firebringer's lenses in an emergency.
Don't get too worried. This isn't the sort of story in which emergencies occur. Yes, it is highly unlikely that you will ever see those Firebringer's lenses activated, so don't get your hopes up. I accepted the Firebringer's lenses from my grandfather, and they immediately started glowing.
Cavorting cards!
Grandpa Smedry dodged to the side as the lenses blasted a pair of intensely hot beams into the ground right in front of my feet. Grandpa Smedry grabbed the lenses from behind, deactivating them. The scent of melted tar rose in the air, and I blinked. my vision marked by 2 bright afterimages of light.
Well, well, I told you they were easy to use.
He glanced up at the building.
We should be too far away for that to have been sensed.
Great.
As my vision cleared, I could see Bastille rolling her eyes. Singh waddled over, raising his sunglasses and inspecting the 3-foot-wide disc of blackened, half-melted asphalt.
Nice shot. I think it's dead now.
I blushed.
Here.
Grandpa Smedry slipped a small velvet bag around the Firebringer's lenses. He pulled the drawstring tight at the top.
This should keep them safe. Now, with these lenses and your talent, you should be able to handle pretty much anything the librarians throw at you.
I accepted the glasses back, and fortunately they didn't go off. Now, as I was telling you previously, these lenses will probably never get used in this story. You'll be lucky if you ever get to see them fired. Again.
Grandfather?
I eyed Bastille, then stepped aside with Grandpa Smedry.
I'm not sure that I can do this.
Nonsense, lad. You're a Smedry.
But I didn't even know what I was until earlier today. Or, well, I didn't know what being a Smedry meant. I don't think... Well, I'm just not ready.
What makes you say that?
I tried to use my talent earlier. To stop Bastille from smacking me with her purse. It didn't work. And that wasn't the first time. Sometimes I just can't make things break. And when I don't want them to break, they usually do anyway.
Your talent is still wild. You haven't practiced it enough. Being a Smedry isn't only about having a talent, it's about finding out how to use that talent. A clever person can make anything turn to his advantage, no matter how much a disadvantage it may seem at first. No Smedry talent is completely controllable. However, if you practice enough, you'll begin to get a grasp on it. Eventually, you'll be able to make things break not merely when and where you want, but also how you want. This doesn't sound like you, Alcatraz. Where's that spark of spirit, that stubbornness that you're always tossing about?
How do you know what I'm like? You only just met me.
Oh? You think I've left you in the librarian hands all this time, never checking in on you?
Of course he checked in on me. Bastille mentioned something about that. But you don't know me. I mean, you didn't even know what my talent was.
I suspected, lad. But I'll admit, I usually go to your foster homes after you'd moved somewhere else. Still, I've been watching over you, in my own way.
If that's the case, then why...
Why did I leave you to the foster homes? I'm not that great a parent. A boy needs somebody who can arrive on time to his birthdays and ball games. Besides, there were reasons for letting you grow up in this world.
That didn't seem like much of an explanation to me, but Grandpa didn't look like he'd say more.
I keep feeling like I won't be much help in this fight. I don't know how to use my talent or these lenses. Maybe I should just get a gun or a sword or something.
Ah, lad, this war we're fighting isn't about guns or even about swords.
What is it about then? Sand?
Information. That's the real power in this world. The man who held a gun on us earlier, he had a power over you. Why?
Because he was going to shoot me.
Because you thought he could shoot you. But he had no power over me because I knew that he couldn't hurt me. And when he realized that...
He ran away.
Information. The librarians control the information in this city, in this whole country. They control what gets read, what gets seen, what gets learned. Because of that, they have power. Well, we're going to break that power, you and I. But first, we need those sands.
Grandpa, you have to have some kind of idea what the sands do. You came to get them from me, after all. Didn't you have a plan to use them?
Pestering Pullmans, of course I did. I wasn't going to smelt them into lenses, just like the librarians are probably doing now. Your father, lad, he was a sand hunter. He spent all his time searching out new and powerful types of sand, gathering the grains together, crafting lenses like nobody had seen before. The sands of Rashid were his crowning achievement, his greatest discovery. He was convinced they had something to do with where the Smedry family gained its talents in the first place. The sands of Rashid are a key, somehow, to understanding the power and origin of our entire family. Can you understand, perhaps, why the librarians might want them?
The talents.
Indeed, lad, the talents! If they could find a way to arm their agents with talents like ours, then the Free Kingdoms could very well be doomed. Smedry powers are a large part of what has kept the librarians at bay for so long. But we're losing. The land you call Australia was lost to us only a few decades back, absorbed and added to the Hushlands. Now Sing's homeland has almost fallen. They've already taken some of the outlying Mokian islands, the places you call Hawaii, Tonga, Samoa, and added them to the Hushlands. I fear it will only be a few years before Mokia itself falls.
He paused, then shook his head.
Either the free kingdoms are going to fall, and everything will become Hushlands, or we're going to find a way to break the librarian's power. The Smedri talents and the secrets these sands will reveal are key to the next stage of the war. Things are changing. Things have to change. We can't just keep fighting and losing ground. That's why your father spent so much time of his life gathering those sands. He felt it was time to go on the offensive.
I felt a stab of anxiety, a question surfacing that I wasn't certain I wanted to know the answer to. Finally, I couldn't keep it down.
Is he still alive, Grandpa?
I don't know.
He looked at me.
I honestly don't know.
Grandpa Smedri placed a hand on my shoulder.
Alive or not, Atticus Smedri was a great man, Alcatraz. An amazing man. And he, like you, was no warrior. We are oculators. Our weapon is information. Keep your eyes open and your mind open. You'll do just fine.
I nodded, slowly.
Good lad. Good lad. Ah, here's Quentin.
The short, tuxedo-wearing man slipped quickly out of the library's front doors.
5 librarians in the main lobby, 3 behind the checkout desk, 2 in the stacks. Their patterns are right on schedule with what we've seen from them before. The entrance to the employee corridors is on the far south side. It isn't guarded right now, though a librarian passes to check on it every few minutes or so.
All right then, in we go.
I seem to recall that last year a Free Kingdoms biographer wrote an article claiming I had spent my childhood performing a deep infiltration of librarian lands. I guess in his mind, spending my life eating Twinkies and playing video games counted as a deep infiltration. I hope you Free Kingdomers aren't too put out to discover the dragons didn't come and bow to me at my birth. I wasn't tutored by the spirits of my dead Smedri ancestors, nor did I kill my first librarian by slitting his throat with his own library card. This is the real me, the troubled boy who grew into an even more troubled young man. Now, I'm not a terrible person. I'm just not a particularly nice one either. If you'd been tied to altars, nearly eaten by walking romance novels, and thrown off a glass pillar taller than Mount Everest, you might have turned out a little like me yourself. As we entered the library, Sing tripped. He hopped on one foot. With a weird mixture of skillful grace and a mad lack of control, Sing fell over a comfortable reading chair and collided with a massive bookshelf.
Now's our chance.
Grandpa Smedri dashed forward. Just one more body in the flurry of lobby activity. The rest of us followed, scooting past the horrified librarians. Grandpa Smedri led us behind the children's section, through the media section, and to a pair of shabby doors at the back marked Employees Only.
Put your oculators lenses back on, lad.
Grandpa Smedri slid on his reddish pair. I did so as well, and through those lenses I could see a certain faint glow around the doors. Not a white or black glow like I'd seen before, but instead, a bluish one. The power was focused on a square in the wall. On closer inspection, I could see that that section of the wall was inset with a small square of glass.
A Hushlander handprint scanner. Kind of like Recognizer's glass. How quaint. All right, lad, it's your turn.
I felt nervous, both because of the librarians so near and because everyone was counting on me. I reached out and pressed my hand against the door. I ignored the sound from the glass and instead focused on myself. I'd always known instinctively about my power. I'd always had it, but I rarely tried to control it specifically. Now I focused on it.
Masterfully done, lad. Masterfully done indeed.
Doors have always been my specialty.
Quentin quickly pushed open the door and waved everyone through. Grandpa Smedri's eyes twinkled as he passed me.
I've always wanted to do this.
Bastille joined us in the hallway, Sing's bag of guns slung over her shoulder. Quentin held the door open for a moment longer, and finally a puffing Sing rounded the bookshelves and joined us.
Sorry. One of the female patrons insisted on wrapping my ankle for me.
Indeed, his sandal-shod right foot now bore a support bandage. Quentin closed the door, then checked the handle, twisting it a few times.
Coconuts! The pain don't hurt. Sorry, sometimes the gibberish comes out when I don't want it to. Anyway, the lock is still broken. It will be suspicious next time someone comes through here.
Can't be helped.
Grandpa Smedry pulled out what appeared to be 2 small hourglasses. He gave them each a tap, and the sand started flowing. He handed one to me. The sand continued to flow at the same rate no matter which way I turned the device. Nifty. I'd always wanted a magical hourglass. Well, not really. But if I'd known that there were such things as magical hourglasses, I'd have wanted one. Who wouldn't? I should note, however, that the Free Kingdomers would be offended by my calling the hourglass magical. They have very strange feelings on what counts as magical and what doesn't. For instance, oculatory powers and Smedry talents are considered a form of magic to most Free Kingdomers, since they are things that can only be performed or used by a few select people. The hourglasses, like the cinematic cars, Sing's glasses, or Bastille's jacket, can be used by anyone. That makes those things technology in Free Kingdomer speech. It's confusing, I know. However, you're probably smart enough to figure it out. And if you aren't, then I shall likely call you an insulting name. Wait for Chapter 15.
We'll meet here in 1 hour. Any longer than that, and we'll be getting close to closing time. When that happens, all those librarians out on patrol will return to check in, and we'll be in serious trouble. Quentin is with me. Sing and Bastille, you go with Alcatraz.
But-
No, you're going with him, Bastille. I order you to.
I'm your Kristen.
True, but you're sworn to protect all Smedrys, especially oculators. The lad will need your help more than I will.
Bastille made no further objections. I wasn't really sure whether to be annoyed or glad.
You 3 inspect this floor, and then move up to the second one. Quentin and I will take the top floor.
But that's where the dark oculator is.
That's where his lair is. That aura glows so brightly because he spends so much time there. You might be able to notice the dark oculator's own aura if he's nearby Alcatraz, but it won't give you much advanced warning. Stay quiet and unseen, all right?
I nodded, slowly.
If you do run into him, lad, make certain you keep those oculator's lenses on. They can protect you from an enemy's lenses if you use them right.
How do I manage that?
It takes time to practice, lad. Time we don't have. But, well, it probably won't come to that. Just try to stay away from any rooms that shine black, okay?
I nodded again.
Well then, the librarians will have to spend ages cleaning up that mess in the lobby. Hopefully they won't even notice the door until we're gone. 1 hour. Quickly now. We're late.
With that, Grandpa Smedry spun to the left and began walking down the empty white hallway. Quentin waved goodbye.
Rutabaga, fire over the inheritance.
Quentin rushed after the elderly oculator. Sing and Bastille turned to me.
It looks like I'm in charge.
This was a strange realization. Yes, I know. Grandpa Smedry had already said that I would have to lead my group. I shouldn't have been surprised to find myself in this situation. The truth is, however, that I was never the sort of person that people put in charge. Those kinds of duties generally go to the types of boys and girls who deliver apples, answer questions, and smile a lot. Leadership duties do not generally go to boys whose desks collapse, who are often accused of playing pranks by removing the doorknobs of school bathrooms, and who once unwittingly made a friend's pants fall down while he was writing on the chalkboard. I never did manage to get that stunt to work again. I point down the hallway.
I guess we go this way.
You think?
Bastille handed Sing his gym bag of guns. She pulled a pair of sunglasses, warrior's lenses as the others called them, out of her jacket pocket and slipped them on. Then she took off, walking down the hallway, handbag flipped around her shoulder.
If I ordered her to go back and follow Grandpa instead, I wonder if she'd go.
I decided that she probably wouldn't. Sing looked at me as we followed Bastille.
Say, Alcatraz, what do you suppose this little wrap on my ankle means?
I frowned, glancing down.
The bandage?
Oh, is that what it is? First aid, it is called, correct?
Yes. Why else would someone wrap your ankle like that?
Singh glanced down, obviously trying to inspect the ankle bandage while still walking.
Oh, I don't know. I thought maybe it was some preliminary courtship ritual.
He looked toward me hopefully.
No, not a chance.
That's sad. She was pretty.
Is that the sort of thing you should be thinking about? I mean, you're an anthropologist. You study cultures. Are you allowed to interfere with the natives you meet?
What? Of course we can. Why, we're here to interfere. We're trying to overthrow librarian domination of the Hushlands, after all.
Why not just let people live their lives and live yours?
Alcatraz. The Hushlanders are enslaved. They're being kept in ignorance, living only with the most primitive technologies. Besides, we need to do something to fight. Back at the Council of Kings, some people are starting to talk about surrendering to the librarians completely. I'm glad for people like your grandfather. People willing to take the fight into librarian lands. It shows that we won't simply sit back and slowly have our kingdoms taken from us.
Up ahead, Bastille glared back at us.
Would you two like to chat a little more? Perhaps sing a little tune? If there are any librarians in front of us, we wouldn't want them to miss out on hearing us coming.
Singh looked at his feet sheepishly, and we fell silent. Though, a part of me wanted to yell something like, "What did you say, Bastille?" as loudly as I could. You see, that is the sad, sorry, terrible thing about sarcasm. It's really funny. But I just walked quietly, thinking about what Singh had said. Particularly the part about the librarians only letting Hushlanders have the most primitive of technologies. It seemed ridiculous to me that the Free Kingdomers considered things like guns and automobiles to be primitive. They weren't primitive, they were all that I knew. Growing up in America, I'd come to assume that everything I had and did was the newest, best, and most advanced in the world. It was very unsettling to be confronted by people who weren't impressed by how advanced my culture was. I wanted to huff and think that whatever they had must not be all that good either. Except the problem was that I'd seen that they had self-driving cars, glasses that could track a person's footprints, and armored knights. All were, in one way or another, superior to what I'd known. Admitted, knights are just cool. I was coming to realize something very difficult. I was slowly accepting that the way I did things, the way my people did things, might not actually be the best way. In other words, I was feeling humility. I sincerely hope that you never have to feel this emotion. Like asparagus and fish, it's not really as good for you as everyone says it is. Selfishness, arrogance, and callousness got me much further than humility ever did. Have I mentioned that I'm not really a very good person? Our small group reached the end of the unmarked hallway, Bastille still in the lead. She paused, holding up a hand, peeking around the corner. Then she continued onward, and stepped onto a carpeted floor. Singh and I followed. The room beyond was filled with books. Really filled. Perhaps you've never experienced the full, suffocating majesty of a true library. You Hushlanders have probably visited your local libraries. You've perused the parts that normal people are allowed to see. These places tend to have row upon row of neat bookshelves, arranged nicely. They're presented attractively for the same reason that kittens are cute, so that they can draw you in, then pounce on you for the kill. Seriously, stay away from kittens. The librarians want everyone to read their books, whether those books are deep and poignant works about dead puppies or nonfiction books about made-up topics like the Pilgrims, penicillin, and France. In fact, the only book that they don't want you to read is the one you're listening to right now. Those aren't real libraries, however. Real libraries take little concern for enticement. You who have visited the basement stacks of a university library's philosophy section know what I'm talking about. In such places, the shelves get squeezed closer and closer together, and they reach higher and higher. Piles of books appear randomly at junctions and in corners waiting to be shelved, like the fourth-generation descendants of a copy of Summa Theologica and an edition of Little Women. Dust settles on the books like a gray perversion of rainforest moss, giving the air a certain moldy, unwelcome scent, faintly reminiscent of a bale dragon's lair. At each corner, you expect to turn and see the withered skeletal remains of some poor researcher who got lost in the stacks and never found his way out. And even those kinds of libraries are but pale apprentices to the enormous cavern of books that I entered that day. We started forward, passing shelves packed so tightly together that only an anorexic racing jockey could have squeezed between them. The bookshelves were easily 15 feet high, and enormous plaques on the ends proclaimed in very small letters the titles each one contained. Long wooden poles with pincer-like hooks leaned against some shelves, and I got the impression that they were used for reaching between the shelves to pull out books.
No, it would take a ridiculous amount of practice to learn to do something like that. I must be wrong.
You may have guessed that I wasn't actually wrong. You see, librarian apprentices have plenty of time to practice things that are ridiculous. They really only have 3 duties. First, to learn the incredibly and needlessly complicated filing system used to catalog books in the back library stacks. Second, to practice with the book hooks. Third, to plot ways to torture an innocent populace. The third one is the most fun. Kind of like gym class, for the murderously insane. Sing, Bastille, and I crept along the rows, careful to keep an eye out for librarian apprentices. This was undoubtedly the most dangerous thing I'd ever done in my short life. Fortunately, we were able to get to the eastern edge of the room without incident.
We should move along the wall so Alcatraz can look down each row of books. That way he might see powerful oculatory sources.
But we should move quickly. We need to find the sands and get out fast before the librarians realize they've been infiltrated.
They looked at me, expectantly.
That sounds good.
You've got this leadership thing down, Smedry. Very inspiring. Come on then, let's keep moving.
Bastille and Sing began to walk along the wall. I, however, didn't follow. I had just noticed something hanging on the wall above us. A very large painting that appeared to be an ornate, detailed map of the world. And it looked nothing like the one I was used to. At this point, you're probably expecting to hear something like, I suddenly realized that everything I thought I had known was untrue. Though I'll likely use that exact phrase, I should warn you that it is misleading. Everything I knew was not untrue. In fact, many of the things I'd learned about the world were quite true. For instance, I knew that the sun came up every day. That was not untrue. Though, admittedly, that sun shone on a geography that I didn't understand. I knew that my homeland was named the United States of America. That was not untrue. Though the USA was not actually run by senators, presidents, and judges, but instead by a cult of evil librarians. I knew that sharks were annoying. This also was not untrue. There's actually nothing witty to add here. Sharks are annoying, particularly the carnivorous kind. You have been warned. I stared up at the enormous wall map and suddenly realized something. Everything I thought I'd known about the world was untrue.
This can't be real.
I stepped back.
I'm afraid it is, Alcatraz.
Sing laid a hand on my shoulder.
That's the world. The entire world. Both the Hushlands and the Free Kingdoms. This is the thing that librarians don't want you to know about.
But it's so big.
And indeed, it was. The Americas were there, represented accurately. The other continents, Asia, Australia, Africa, and the rest, were there as well. They were collectively labeled Inner Libraria on the map, but I recognized them easily enough. The difference then was the new continents. There were 3 of them, pressed into the oceans between the familiar continents. 2 of the new continents were smaller, perhaps the size of Australia. One, however, was very large. It sat directly in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, right between America and Japan.
It's impossible. we would have noticed a landmass like that sitting in the middle of the ocean.
You think you would have noticed. But the truth is that the librarians control the information in your country. How often have you personally been out sailing in the middle of what you call the Pacific Ocean?
But simply because I haven't been there doesn't mean anything. The ocean is like kangaroos and grandfathers. I believe that other people have seen it. Ship captains, airplane pilots, satellite images.
Satellites controlled by the librarians.
Bastille regarded the map through her sunglasses.
Your pilots fly guided by instruments and maps that the librarians provide. And not many people sail boats in your culture, particularly not into the deep ocean. Those who do are bribed, threatened, brainwashed, or, most often, carefully misled.
Those other continents make sense if you think about it. I mean, a planet that is 70% water? What would be the point of that much wasted space? I'd never have thought people would buy that lie had I not studied Hushlander cultures.
People go along with what they're told. Even intelligent people believe what they read and hear, assuming they're given no reason to question.
A hidden gas station I can believe, but this isn't some little cover-up or misdirection. There are 3 new continents on that map.
Not new. The cultures of the Free Kingdoms are quite well established. Indeed, they're far more advanced than Hushlander cultures.
The librarians conquered the backward sections of the world first. They're easier to control.
But what about Columbus? What about history?
Lies. Fabrications, many of them. The rest are distortions. I mean, haven't you always wondered why your people supposedly developed guns after more technologically advanced weapons like swords?
No. Swords aren't more advanced than guns.
That's what they want you to believe, Alcatraz. That way, the librarians can keep the powerful technology for themselves. Don't you think it's strange that nobody in your culture carries swords anymore?
No. Sing, most people don't need to carry swords or even guns.
You've been beaten down. You're docile, controlled.
We're happy.
Yes, you're quite happy and completely ignorant. Exactly like you're supposed to be. Don't you have a phrase that says, ignorance is bliss?
The librarians came up with that one.
I shook my head.
No, this is too much. I was willing to overlook the self-driving cars, the magic glasses. Well, they could be some kind of trick. Sneaking into a library. That sounded fun. But this? This is ridiculous. I can't accept it.
And likely, you Hushlanders are thinking the very same thing. You are saying to yourself, this story just lost me. It degenerated into pure silliness. And since only silly people enjoy silliness, I'm going to go read a book about a boy whose dog gets killed by his mother. Twice. Before you embark on your voyage into caninicide, I'd like to offer a single argument for your consideration. Plato. Plato was a funny little Greek man who lived a long time ago. He's probably best known for 2 things. First, for writing stories about his friends, and second, for philosophically proving that somewhere in the eternities, there exists a perfect slice of cheesecake. Read the Parmenides. It's in there. At this moment, however, the listener should be less interested in cheesecake and more interested in caves. One cave, to be specific. Plato tells a story about a group of prisoners who lived in a very special cave. The prisoners were tied up, heads held so that they could only face one direction, and all they could see was the wall in front of them. A fire behind them threw shadows up on this wall, and the shadows were the only things the prisoners ever knew. To them, the shadows were their world. As far as they knew, there was nothing else. However, one of these prisoners was eventually released and saw that the world was much more than just shadows. At first, he found this new world very, very strange. Once he learned of it, however, he returned and tried to tell his friends about it. They, however, didn't trust him and didn't want to listen to him. They didn't want to believe in this new world because it didn't make sense to them. You Hushlanders are like these people. You have, through no fault of your own, lived your entire life believing in the shadows the librarians have shown you. The things I reveal in this narrative will seem like nonsense to you. There is no getting around this. No matter how logical my arguments are, they will seem illogical to you. Your mind, struggling to find ways to hold on to your librarian lies, will think of all kinds of ridiculous concerns. You will ask questions such as, but what about tidal patterns? Or, but how can you explain the lack of increased fuel cost created by airplanes flying around these hidden landmasses? Since nothing I can say would be able to pierce your delusions, let the fact that I make no arguments stand as ultimate proof that I am right. As Plato once said that